Hi, my name is Mandis Mumberg, and I'm a Principal Solutions Architect with AWS. And I'm joined here with Carmen Puccio, who is also a Principal Solutions Architect. And we'll be talking you through how to take an application that was generally very monolithic and turn that into a container. And the specific application in mind that we're going to take is one that most Java developers will be very familiar with, the Java Jpetstore application, which is one of the most difficult applications to containerize and also break apart into smaller pieces. So Carmen, could you maybe go through how we would go about building a container that contains the Jpetstore application?
Sure, absolutely. So the first thing our customers ask us and our developers ask us is how do we actually take the application and move it into a container itself? So we're going to go through a couple of steps, and the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to walk you through the components of a Docker file. For there, we're going to take a tool called Docker Compose, and we're going to use that to build the actual container. And then from there, we're going to take that container and then push it up to an image registry. All right, so we're going to get started by opening up our Docker file, and I'll walk you through the components of it. So if you think about it, Docker files are essentially your application, but its infrastructure is code, it's your application is code, and the developers own the process. A lot of times we talk to our customers like how they build containers. It's supposed to be a collaborative effort, but the application footprint, as it's defined in the Docker file, is something that the developer will see throughout the process. So what you're seeing here is a Docker file that's built for you, and it's our Jpetstore application, and it has a concept of something that's called a multi-stage build. And multi-stage builds are very important in the container world because it allows you to ship the smallest shippable unit, which is your application, at the end of your pipeline, if you will. So in this case, we're using the Maven JDK as our build container, and you can see we tagged it as such. And then from there, we're going through the process of actually building the container. At the very end of that, what we get is the war file, and the war file is what takes our container to what makes our container actually run because it is the application. And as you can see, we actually take the JBoss container image as the next stage of the multi-stage build, and we tag it as our application layer. From there, if we go down a little bit further, we do something that's very important as you build your container is we change the user. So when you build your containers, you want to think about the security footprint, and it should be a very small attack surface. But in this case, we have to change user from root to install a package that we'll use later as part of our entry point because we need this netcat package, and then we change back to JBoss. Down here, we open up the ports that'll make our container image run, and then we actually start the container with our entry point and CMD commands.
Okay, so this is interesting. There's a lot of things happening inside of that application in that Docker file. Does this have to happen every time the container starts, or does that happen only once?
So it's actually interesting. Docker has a concept of layers. So you could think of each command essentially as its own unique layer. And the thing about that makes Docker very interesting is when you actually build your image, each step being a layer, as you change things further and further down the Docker file, it should build quicker. So you shouldn't have to go through the process of actually building all of the dependencies from Maven because that's something you do very early on in the file. But if you change a component later on down in the Docker file, the top layer images still persist, and you pick up from that point where you made your change, and then it builds very quickly.
Right, so as a build process, it accelerates because of layers as well. And once that image is built and it exists, it just runs. We don't need to have all of the dependency things that we did earlier on in the build phase, right? Because we have this runtime container stage that we defined.
So to get started, a lot of times we take our Docker file and the customers will ask, well, what do I do now? And absolutely, you can take your Docker file and you can use that to actually run a couple of commands to get your image up and running. But what Docker did was they built a utility that sits in the developer's hand, and it's called Docker Compose. And it allows you to define your application inside of a YAML file. And if you think about it, an application is never necessarily just one component. As you move towards a more microservice-based architecture, you'll start to see more and more layers inside of something, inside of your environment, and Docker Compose actually makes that very easy.
So something as simple as our application that just has two tiers. We have our application and our database. That's pretty simple to control with the CLI on its own. But once it gets more complicated with multiple microservices, we'd want to rely on the Docker Compose utility.
Correct. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up the Docker Compose file just to give a quick overview of it. And what you're seeing here is you're seeing those two layers. You're seeing the Jpetstore layer and you're seeing the Postgres layer. And essentially what's interesting about this is we only defined the application in our Docker file, which is the Jpetstore layer. The Postgres layer is something that we're actually just pulling down from the Docker Hub itself, but we're setting environment variables that are unique about the application. So now that we have the application defined inside of Docker Compose, we're going to start up the application. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start the Postgres container up. And we're going to run it as a background process because by nature, Docker logs everything to standard out. And something like your database layer necessarily isn't something that you want to see as part of your console application. You don't want to have all of the flood of log messages. You're really concerned about the application tier.
Yeah,
so
especially in your development environment.
Absolutely. So unless you're troubleshooting and looking to that layer, you would want to put that in as a background process. And you can see here, it's actually starting it up. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build the Jpetstore. So the Jpetstore is going to take a minute or two. But you can see here, it's a simple command called docker compose build Jpetstore. And you can see it going through the various components of the Docker file itself. So when we were talking about those layers, this application has never been built before, so it has to go through every single one of those layers.
Yeah, so I'm a little bit intrigued about this whole process. The developer built the Docker file itself.
Correct.
And they did all of the steps that they would expect because they know the application best. And once that application container is built, does the operations team need to know all of those things that the Docker developer used?
They don't necessarily need to know it in depth, but they should be familiar with it because it's supposed to be a shared responsibility model. So when you think about your operations teams, your security teams, it's a collaborative effort now. Most likely, the image that the developer is going to build his application on top of is something that came from the operations team and the security team, and that'll be the base image that your your enterprise uses to build your applications on. So they could potentially work with you to put components inside the Docker file. So if you think about things when you start to make your application ready for production, how do you do monitoring? How do you do logging? That's something that they would work in as part of a joint effort. But the developer owns the actual Docker file itself from the application standpoint.
Right. And the only thing that they need to learn as a shared skill between of these different teams is effectively the containerized stack, right? The containerizing technology. The application language internally can be changed and be swapped out without the operations engineers needing to know or worry about it.
Correct. The really cool thing about this is it's the same experience regardless of who you are as a developer. So a new developer could come on board and you can actually take the source repo, which has your Docker file, it has your Docker Compose file, and all of the artifacts around the application. And as soon as they clone that to their desktop, they have a working version of the application. It's very easy to get up and running because you're using this common set of tools.
Now that we have this Docker image that we've built locally on our machine, how can we use that same image to deploy that into an orchestration system like ECS or EKS?
Sure. So Docker has a concept of an image registry. So you could use the Docker Hub or you could use a native service from AWS called the Elastic Container Registry. And the cool thing about that is that's natively integrated with our services. So if you take a look at your machine here and you do a Docker images, you should see the containerized application Jpetstore is sitting there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take that image and we're going to push it up to ECR or the container registry. And the first thing you need to do is you need to actually get your credentials on your path. And just run this simple command here. And you can see that we've logged in. And the next thing that you're going to do is you can see if we do a describe, the CloudFormation template that was deployed as part of this lab should have created 2 registries for you. And you can see those sitting right here. You can see those repositories. And if you do your Docker images, as I showed before, you'll see your image. But the first thing you need to do is you need to tag it. So the way that ECR works is you want to tag it with the information about your repository. So we've put together a command here that'll help you. And that command will run. And you can see that it's tagged. And if I do a Docker images again, you can now see that the containerized application Jpetstore carries a tag on top of it with our account ID and essentially the path to the Jpetstore front end. And what you'll see is the image ID is the same. So Docker has a concept of tagging. So you're taking that base image, which is the containerized application, and you're tagging it with our repository information to get it up into ECR. And what you're seeing is the image ID being the same. It's shared. And now we push. And when we were talking about those layers earlier, you're seeing those layers get pushed. As you push subsequent versions of your application up to the ECR, if the layer already exists, it'll actually make your build process quicker. It won't take as long to push it up there because you don't have to push it up again. You're only pushing the parts that change.
Thank you very much, Colin. So in this lab, we walked through how to take the Jpetstore application, which is a very monolithic application, and containerize it. And we containerized not only the application, but also its dependencies and its whole environment and emulated that using the Docker Compose tool. Our next step is to take that image that we created and deploy it across multiple environments at scale. And the first step to that was to push it into a remote container repository, and we chose to use ECR. In our next lab, we'll look at how you can deploy that image into orchestration systems like ECS and the Kubernetes container service for AWS. Follow the links below in this video to see those labs.